It was a humiliating day for the United States as the World Economic Forum gets underway in Davos. It's January 20th, 2026. Here's what unfolded. What's now unmistakable is that the United States' traditional allies are being forced into an adversarial posture towards the US, and that's because of Donald Trump's threats, but they are finally pushing back. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney delivered a striking speech today, warning that the United States is no longer acting as a stabilizing global power that provides security and leadership to the world. By the way, I've also heard that Carney wrote his entire speech himself. That's incredibly rare. French President Emmanuel Macron sharply criticized Trump, calling his tariff war unacceptable and condemning the United States for acting like international bullies. As you likely saw last night, Trump leaked what appeared to be a private text message from Macron, in which Macron said he did not understand Trump's actions regarding Greenland and offered to meet. After Trump publicly leaked that message, Macron responded by saying that he would no longer have any desire to meet with Trump. Macron also emphasized today that China should increase investment in Europe. The Belgian Prime Minister said that Europe cannot be soft anymore and said that nobody wants to join the United States, despite Trump's threats and the fact that Trump says everyone wants to be part of the US. Canada and multiple other nations spoke openly about strengthening trade deals with partners outside the United States, including India, Thailand, countries across Asia and South America. The message was unmistakable. The world is moving on and finding other partners. A quick aside, if you like these updates, go ahead and add the Midas Touch podcast right now, anywhere you find audio podcasts for more breaking news. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent addressed Davos and effectively warned countries not to retaliate against Trump's tariffs and threats, telling the world that they should simply accept Trump's abuse and give him exactly what he wants. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick went even further, declaring that the Western Hemisphere must belong to the United States while attacking Europe for embracing clean energy. So who is aligning with Trump? Belarus, whose dictator has already signed documents to join Trump's so-called peace board earlier. Trump has also invited Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. So that leaves the United States, Russia, and Belarus versus basically the entire rest of the world. After France refused to join Trump's fake peace board, Trump threatened a 200% tariff on French wine imports. He also reposted a message on a social media platform claiming that the US's real enemies are not China or Russia, but rather NATO, the United Nations, and what he called the enemy within. Meanwhile, Canada's armed forces have reportedly modeled scenarios for how they would respond to a hypothetical US invasion. Greenland's prime minister has also urged his country to prepare for a potential US invasion. When Trump was asked about all of this during a disturbing press conference today, he told reporters, quote, "You'll find out," when questioned about how far he's willing to go to take over Greenland. And we're now learning that Germany has joined France in saying it will ask the European Commission to explore unleashing the EU's so-called trade bazooka in response to Trump's threats to seize Greenland. The bazooka is a major anti-coercion policy tool, formerly known as the anti-coercion instrument, that allows the EU to retaliate against economic blackmail from countries with measures like tariffs on goods, restrictions on services and investments, or exclusion from public procurement contracts. Never used before, its potential activation signals growing European unity against Trump's aggressive tactics and could target tens of billions in U.S. exports if tensions continue to escalate. That's where things stand tonight. Spread the word and follow for more.
All right, Shalom. I'd like to start off by giving all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Baha, Kodash. Double honors to the apostles of GMS that give us his truth and all his purity, and salutations to all you occupants pushing this word throughout the four corners of the earth in sincerity and in truth. I'm the brother Yahweh Sap, and the topic of this lesson will be going into the division between NATO and America, which is the beast and the whore. You know, the beast being NATO and the EU, which includes America, but America is that whore that rideth upon the beast. America has been the one to dictate, the foreign policies of these European countries. You know, whatever America says goes, which is why whenever America wants to go to war with a country, a NATO backs them up, you know. But right now, what we're seeing is prophecy coming to pass. The scriptures say that these things will take place, that the beast will be divided. And on Lord's will, we're about to go into that. But this is Luke chapter 12, and I'm going to start at 49. It says, "I am come to send fire on the earth, And what will I if it already be kindled? This is Yahweh Shah speaking. He said, I am come to send fire on the earth. And what will I if it already be kindled? So Yahweh Shah, whom the world ignorantly called Jesus Christ, he's coming to kill, and, the killing, the judgment will be in the form of fire. Just like the flood came and, cleansed the earth of the wicked, that's what Yahweh Shah is coming to do. Real quick, let's go to Matthew chapter, matter of fact, I think in Luke there's a verse that says the same thing. Let's see. Yep. This is Luke chapter 17, verse 26. And as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be also in the days of the Son of Man, which shows you that when the Lord returns, before the Lord returns, that there will be prophets out, warning the people, just like Noah did, about the coming destruction, which the coming destruction is the nuclear holocaust and the utter and complete annihilation of America, which is Babylon the Great, So it says they did eat, they drink, they married wives, they were given in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. So pretty much life is going to be going on as usual. It's going to be business as usual. People are going to be partaking of the same activities that they're partaking in now. Even though all hell is going to be breaking loose all throughout the four corners of the earth, you're still going to have different parts of the earth, that's not as affected as others, because in order for them to establish this digital system, you can't have everything be destroyed, which is why they're planning for these 15-minute cities, which pretty much will be kind of like sanctuary cities from the chaos that's gonna be going on, and that's how they'll be able to trap people into taking the mark of the beast, the RFID chip. They're gonna tell them, oh, you want safety from the foreign invaders, you want safety from domestic terrorism, you want safety from this, safety from that. Well, we got these 15-minute cities, and in order for you to be eligible, your social credit score got to be good, and you got to take the RFID chip. That's going to be the deal, Man, this is Satan, man. My screen just stopped working. So I'm going to cut the video off, and Lord's will, I'm going to continue when it gets better. All right, so I'm back now, but let me read the scripture again. This is Luke chapter 17, verse 27, verse 26. As it was in the days of Noah, so shall it also be in the days of the Son of Man. They did eat, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage unto the day that Noah entered into the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. And the ark in this time represents this truth, the secret place of the Most High that's gonna have us abide under his shadow, to be shielded and protected from his wrath, which is to come, and ultimately going into salvation. The salvation consists of the UFOs, the so-called UFOs, the chariots of the Lord, operated by his angels, coming down and saving the elect as the missiles are coming down. That's going to be the ark, That's going to be the protection and safety from the destruction that's going to be out here. It says, but the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Even thus shall it be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed. So that shows you that the Messiah, whom the world ignorantly called Jesus Christ, he's not coming back for peace. He's coming back for bloodshed. He's coming back to bring destruction on a global scale where billions will die. That's why the scriptures say the slain of the Lord is going to be many. So the Lord ain't come for peace, man. So back to Luke chapter 12, verse 49. I am come to send fire on the earth, and what will I if it already be kindled? So the Lord is basically saying, he's coming to bring the destruction, And what else can he do? Because it already started. He's only going to add more fuel to the fire, and it's already kindled in the form of these different tensions and skirmishes all over the earth that's going to lead into this destruction. The wars and the rumors of wars, everything that Trump is doing, this administration is pissing off all these other nations, and is making America hateful on a global scale, to where now all of its allies is isolating her. And even though all of this is happening, America's still proud. Trump's still talking shit. Scott Bessett's still talking shit at the World Economic Forum meeting, telling these European leaders how weak they are, and how they need to step it up, and how America's the best, just boasting and bragging, and Scott Bassett told Greenland, he said, yo, Greenland's investments in America is insignificant, just like Greenland is. Just prideful, man, but all this is doing is making America's enemies turn against her, because now you got Canada, France, Germany, the UK, all of these nations, they're turning against America, and they're on the side of Greenland, in this situation, so get ready to see them, butt heads, so it says, verse 50, but I have a baptism to be baptized with, and how am I straitened till it be accomplished? Which that baptism represents Yahweh's crucifixion. It says, suppose ye that I am come to give peace on earth? I tell you, nay, but rather division. So the Lord, he didn't come to bring peace. He came to bring division, which is why you see all this tension and division on all different levels in society, whether it be within families, whether it be within social groups, whether it be within political groups, the left versus the right, whether it be within the races, whether it be within the sexes, you got all this division going on, and it's ultimately orchestrated by Yahweh Bashim Yahshua, because the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. So whatever is happening down here is the will of Yahweh Bashim Yahshua, so that's it on that. This is Matthew chapter 12, verse 26. It says, and if Satan cast out Satan, he's divided against himself. How shall then his kingdom stand? That's right. So Satan be divided against himself. His kingdom cannot stand, So right now, we got the so-called white man divided against himself, which they're all Satan, because Satan simply means adversary. They're contrary to the ways of the Heavenly Father, his son, and the truth, which is why they're all Satan. And when you read, I think, Revelation, the 20th chapter, going into the dark ages and the transition period from the Roman Empire until, to Jake ruling Europe during the time of the Moors, and after that, the scriptures say that after Satan is bound for 1,000 years in his prison, which is the dark ages, that he will be loose out of that prison, which is Europe, them being in that beast-like state, the wild men of Europe, they came out of that state and pretty much overtook the whole world, But the point is that the scriptures call them Satan, So if Satan cast out Satan, the so-called white man battling against himself, he's divided against himself. How then shall his kingdom stand? Here it is. Y'all all supposed to share the kingdom. All you Edomites, the blessing, the inheritance of Esau, Edom, belongs to all these Edomites. Yet it seemed as if America is the only one that wants to enjoy the blessing. They want to hold the blessing all to themselves. They got the blessing of the sword and all of that, right? And now they're turning that against their own brethren, So you got all this division going on between NATO, and that's all prophecy. Now let's go to the book of Revelation, chapter 17, verse, this is verse 12. Matter of fact, verse 11, it says, "And the beast that was and is not, even he is the eighth," which is going into America. It says, "and is of the seventh, it goeth into position." So that's America. America came out of those, European powers, out of Great Britain and all the way back, starting from the Greeks. But it says that it's going to go into perdition, go into destruction. That is the fate of Babylon the Great. Verse 12, "And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast." And the 10 horns represents the EU, the European Union, right? It says, "These have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast." Yeah, that's why NATO and the EU, they whatever America says. Whatever America's foreign policy is their foreign policy, So it says, "These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful." That's right. So these shall make war with the Lamb. NATO, EU, America, they're all going to war against Yahweh Shah, whom the world called Jesus Christ, because they are Satan. They are adversary, So they got to be against righteousness. And Yahweh Shah represents complete righteousness. And also, how are they going to make war with the Lamb? They're doing it now by trying to establish this newer order. And all these different systems being implemented is anti-Yahweh Shah. It's all anti-Yahweh Shah. So they're planning on fighting against the Messiah using their Space Force. You got America got its own Space Force, and certain European countries working on their Space Force, which shows you that they know that there is a coming invasion from above, which is going to be Yahweh Shah and his innumerable multitude of angels. But it says, "And he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the horse sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues." America basically dominating over the whole earth, It says, "And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore." And we're seeing that now. These European countries, these NATO countries, they're hating America, because of Trump's pride. His arrogance is making them hateful. Even amongst the most prideful people, the devil himself, Esau, Edom, the scriptures say pride is hateful before men and the Most High, right? So even the proud people themselves, the Edomites, they're sick and tired of their own brethren's arrogance, man. And the scriptures say that they would have a stout look, Matter of fact, let's see. Matter of fact, let me finish this and I'm going to go to that. It says, "And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire." So that's what's getting ready to take place. NATO is going to annihilate America in this coming Third World War. Eventually they're going to, they already are starting to distance themselves from America. They're doing this trade sanction thing where basically all of Europe is going to be disconnected from America as far as economically. So that's going to cripple America's economy even more, right? But it says, "shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire." So NATO is going to shoot missiles at America too. It says, verse 17, "For Yahweh Bashim Shah put in their hearts to fulfill his will." So this is the will of Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shah, "and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of Yahweh Bashim Shah shall be fulfilled." That's right. So NATO is another arm for America. America funds the majority of NATO, right? NATO has damn near $1 trillion budget. The majority of it comes from America. And this is on top of America's $1 trillion budget for their own military. Well, 1.5 now, right? Because Trump just upped it because we're getting ready to go to war. World War III. right? So it says, and the woman which thou sawest is that great city, America, which reigneth over the kings of the earth. That's right. So now, stout. This is Daniel chapter 7, verse. Okay. This is Daniel chapter 7, verse 19. It says, then I would know the truth of the fourth beast. The fourth beast is the Roman Empire. It says, which was diverse from all the others. The Roman Empire is the first kingdom, to establish this whole democracy, the plebeians and the patricians, which now represents the Democrats and the Republicans, so it was diverse. And plus, they didn't put like the leadership, the kingship, the Caesarship, if that's even a word. It wasn't really passed down from father to son as it was in old kingdoms. They got elections, right, where they replaced their kings. So that's what made Rome diverse from all the others. It says exceeding dreadful. Rome was dreaded on the earth, the most powerful military before America came on the scene. So it says, whose teeth were of iron and his nails of brass. So that represents what? Their military, which devoured, break in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet. The same thing America's done is the same thing Rome has done, which is why America's fallen in the same fashion as Rome, because America is Rome in a reincarnation. Rome 2.0, invasions, wars, crippling debt, right? This was happening in Rome. And it's happening right now in America, which is why there's many articles, many documentaries by experts, historians going into the comparison of Rome and America. Verse 20, and of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, the 10 horns, once again, is the EU. It says, in the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell. So the other horn is America. And the 3 that fell before that horn is the Spaniards, the British, and the French. They lost the war to America, those revolutionary wars. It says, even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth that spake very great things. America speaks very great things. They're the greatest military in the world. We're the best in the world. No other country could have done what we've done. Like, the things that Trump is saying is proof that this is Babylon the Great and that these so-called white people are the Edomites, man. Right? Speaking great things. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to have a space force, They're going to see destruction like never before. God bless America and no one else. These are great things that they're speaking, man. Prideful things, right? The scriptures say Babylon would have the mindset of, I am and none else beside me. This is the mindset of America. And the whole world now is giving them what they want. You want to be isolated? We're going to isolate you, right? You are none else beside you. So fuck you then. So the whole world now is making deals amongst each other. China and all these different nations, Saudi Arabia, they're all making deals to cut America off on a global scale, And it says, whose look was more stout than his fellows. That's the point. His look was more stout than his fellows. America has a stout look against their own brethren in the NATO and the EU, right? And when we go to stout, in the Hebrew is Ra'ab. And it says great figurative of power. It says Captain, Chief, Great, Lord, Master, Stout. And that's how you see Trump acting towards these European leaders, as a master, right? Telling them how to run their countries, how they're doing a bad job and this and that, It says to speak great things, to speak proudly, piously, right? This is America, man. Trump, what he's been saying in the past few weeks, shows his pride is on another level, man. The Lord is puffing him up just like he puffed up Pharaoh before he brings them down. right? So his luck was more stout than his fellows, which, is going into more his pride, pretty much. Greater than, strong, great, much exceeding, right? So you see that in Trump's face, even in his first administration, you could see his what's the word I'm looking for? His his hatred towards these European leaders. They all were standing up there, and he pushed them all to the side and got in front of all of them, right, and looking down on all of them, because he's Nero. He's the king of Babylon. Yeah, y'all them little boys, I got the big arm. I'm the one in charge, right? That's his mindset. So, yep, verse 21, I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. And that's what America's done. They made war against the so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, which are the saints, and they have prevailed. Over the past 5 centuries, they prevailed in enslaving us, slaughtering us, committing genocide against us, poisoning us, doing all these different things behind the scenes to basically wipe Israel out, because that's what they want, because they understand that we have next, as far as world domination. Their empire is up. The average age of empires is 250 years, and America has reached that this year. So this is why you see them rushing. The scriptures say the devil is coming down with great wrath, because he knows he had but a short time. So they see all these signs, so they know they don't have long, and therefore they're moving in with this New World Order no matter what. This is why Trump can't be stopped. This is why Congress is not doing anything to stop him, right? Because this is the man that the Most High chose to bring forth, the end. It says, unto the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. And that time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. That's right. So, the so-called white man, he's about to go on a rampage and slaughtering our people. The scriptures prophesied Jacob's trouble, which is pretty much calamity coming upon so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. But the Lord said what? That he's going to have the angels stand up. Michael is going to stand up for us and the other angels to preserve us. Just like how in Egypt, the Lord kind of had a shield, a bubble of protection over the land of Goshen, where Jake resided. That's how the Lord is going to protect his elect in these last days. Babylon, Egypt, America is all going to get plagued, but the elect, they're going to be shielded from that. Okay, that's it on that. Let's see. This is 2nd Ezra chapter 13, and this is in the GNT version. This is going into the Messiah's coming, and how pretty much these nations are all going to get together to fight against the Messiah, on his ship. That's why you see all these space forces, these weapons being put in space, is to fight against the Messiah, So this is 2nd Ezra chapter 13, verse okay, so I'm going to start at 25. It says, this is the meaning of the vision. The man you saw coming up out of the sea represents the one whom Yahweh, the Most High, has kept ready for many ages, which is speaking about Yahushua, his only begotten son, has been up there in the spirit realm for over 2,000 years. The book of Isaiah, Yahushua speaking through Isaiah, he said, I have long time holding my peace. Now I have refrained myself. Now I'm going to cry like a travailing woman. So the time is coming for Yahushua to unleash all this built up anger over the course of these ages, right? The Lord have kept ready for many ages. He will free the world he created and establish a new order for those who survive. So Yahweh Shah created this world, with the authority that the Most High gave him. By him were all things created in heaven and in earth, visible and invisible, right? All things were created by him and for him. Yahweh Shah, he's the creator, under the Most High, because the Most High, he doesn't do anything himself. He gives the order to his son and the angels to do his bidding. So it says he will free the world he created and establish a new order for those who survive. That's going to be the real new world order. The new world is going to be the new age, the new age, the new order of the ages, which is going to be Yahweh Shah returning and setting up righteousness on earth by setting his people above everybody else, starting with the elect. That's how the Lord is going to free the world, and the new order is going to be the law, statutes, and commandments and judgments of Yahweh Bashim Shah being established upon the earth. It says, you saw the wind, fire, and storm going out of the man's mouth, which represents all destruction coming from Yahweh Shah and his chariot. And you saw that without the use of a spear or any other weapon, he destroyed the great crowd that was advancing to attack him. And that great crowd, we read it, Revelation 17, Daniel, the 7th chapter, is going into the beast, the beast and his horns and that whore basically fighting against the Messiah, Revelation 12, there was war in heaven. Mike was going to stand up against the dragon and his angels, right? And the dragon is not going to prevail. So that's going to be the Messiah coming back with the angels or UFOs fighting against the so-called white man and his military, NATO, America, and all these different nations with their space force and fighter jets and, things of that nature. But Yahweh Shah, he's not going to need any weapon. Yahweh Shah is the weapon himself, He's the weapon of the Most High, right? So there's nothing that's going to be able to stop him. Like it says, he's not going to have to lift up hand or sword or take up a gun or none of that. Just his aura, his presence alone is going to destroy these nations. It says, this means that the time is near when God, Yahweh Shema Shah Most High, will begin to free the people of the earth. To free who? The children of Israel. That's who salvation is for. Free us from what? From bondage under the hand of the so-called white man. It says at that time, everyone will be close to panic. That's what's happening now. There's panic on earth among all these different global leaders. They will begin to make war against one another. So this is why they're getting ready to stir up this Third World War, because they understand that they don't have long. Their time is short. They're seeing the signs in the heavens. They're seeing the three-eye atlas, the solar storms, the earthquakes in diverse places, and all these things are signs to let us know that we're in the end. So they getting ready to set this shit off. World War III, baby. City against city, right? You see Minneapolis, Minnesota, or whatever, Trump going against them and is about to deploy, the troops are already ready, over 1,500 troops to declare martial law, the Insurrection Act. It says region against region, nation against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. So that's what we see. Even amongst the so-called white man himself, they're divided. America versus NATO. Even amongst NATO, they're divided amongst themselves. Russia's divided against all of them, and they're all Edomites, man. Right? It says when that happens, the signs I told you about earlier will take place. Then will I reveal my son, whom you saw as a man coming up out of the sea. So that's Yahweh Shah basically coming from space to make war against the armies of the earth. It says when they hear his voice, all the nations will leave their own territory, forget their wars with one another. Yeah, because it's going to be full-blown World War III. They're going to be fighting each other. But Yahweh Shah's return is going to stop time, Yahweh Shah coming is going to, have everything put on pause, They all going to say, yo, yeah, I know we got beef with each other, but we got a greater threat to take care of up there. So they all going to combine their forces to fight against the Messiah, And Ronald Reagan, he had that speech at the United Nations back in 1984, I believe, where he mentioned how you know, the world, all these nations would put their differences aside quickly if there was an outer threat force that came to Earth. They would put their differences aside and fight against that outer force. So they know Yahweh Shah is getting ready to come, man. Right? It says, when they hear his voice, all the nations will leave their own territory, forget their wars with one another, and come together in one great crowd, too large to count, as you saw in your dream. The nations will unite with the single purpose of making war on my son. He will take his stand on the top of Mount Zion, and the new Jerusalem will be seen by everyone. So Yahweh Shah is going to take out these nations, and Yahweh Shah is going to come down with his elect from the chariots. You know, that's going to be New Jerusalem, right? That's going to come down from heaven. You know, the whole world is going to witness the salvation. It says it will be completed and fully built, just as in your dream you saw the mountain carved, but not by human hands. That's right. So, you know, that's not talking about a city coming down from above. That's speaking about the Israelites, the elect, having the law, statutes, and commandments and judgments of the Most High embedded in their minds, getting ready to establish order on the earth, right? It says, then my son will condemn the assembled nations for their godlessness. That is what the storm meant. He will confront them with the wicked plans they have made. And the wicked plans is what? There's no more order / great reset. And also with the torments they must endure. This is what the flames meant. Then he will easily destroy them by the means of the law. That is what the fire meant. Right? So basically, Yahweh Shah is coming to bring judgment, man. To establish the laws, statutes, and commandments of Yahweh Bashim Shah. And that's going to bring total peace, righteousness on earth. You know, because right now the whole earth is in shambles, man. It's nothing but chaos going on. Everything is dying under this devil, man. Right? So the Lord is coming to establish a judgment, man, in the form of World War III and the invasion of the so-called UFOs. So with that, I hope this was edifying. I'm going to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Bashim Yahshua Bashim Chakudash. Double honors to the apostles of GMS that give us his truth and all his purity. And salutations to all you who can pushing this word throughout the four corners of the earth. Shalom.